Welcome to the Soul Workspace, a sanctuary for lightworkers, visionaries, and soul-led creators. I'm Andrea, and it's my honor to be of service. All right. Hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Here we are, next episode. Maybe I don't need to start my podcast episodes saying this every time, but it helps me. Yeah, this is great. I am sitting in my basement now. Before we did the library, now we're trying out the basement office. So you might hear kids screaming in the distance. We'll see. But I share this because I want to inspire those that maybe you're thinking about doing a podcast, but you feel like you have to have all this stuff, right? You have to have perfect technology, perfect setup, or just anything that we feel inspired to do, but we just don't feel like we're quite ready. But you can start just like this. So I didn't share in my story because I didn't want to go on and on, because there's always just different parts of the story. I've lived for 38 years. So yeah, I didn't really share more of the, I guess you could say, about my spiritual journey. Um, I've always had this feeling. Um, I've always had, like, what do I say? Well, we'll just dive right in. I remember when we lived in our farmhouse when I was, I don't know, first grade, till first grade, so like kindergarten, first grade. And I remember looking in the mirror, and I would stare at myself long enough to where all of a sudden I felt like I was like expanded out of my body. It was hard to put into words, and it still is. But maybe you've had this experience. And I just remember I would continue to have these experiences. And sometimes I wouldn't have to look in my mirror. I would repeat this in my head. I am not me. I am not me. I am not me. And I don't know why. I'm a kid. I don't even know if that makes sense now. But for some reason, it was this realization or this feeling that I was more than just my body. Again, I was 6 or 7. So, what do you do? And I remember going camping with my dad and my uncle, my cousin. And we're looking at the stars. And my dad always loved to talk about space, and it always get me really thinking. And we were kind of in this moment, and I just was like, and this was kind of in the future. I don't know, maybe like 12, because I kept having these every once in a while, these feelings. And I tried to put it into words, and I was like, do you guys ever like stare at yourself in the mirror or say this thing to yourself and you just feel like you're kind of like floating out of your body? Or I don't know exactly how I worded it. And bless my dad and my uncle, because they didn't make me feel weird about it. They were just like, huh, no, like, what do you mean? And I realized in that moment, I was like, oh gosh, like, they have no idea what I'm talking about. I thought this was like something that everybody went through. Oh my gosh, I feel so silly. And I was like, tried to explain it again. And then I was like, just, we all just kind of moved on. And it's funny because, that's such a pivotal moment where if I had parents that were spiritually awakened, what might my journey, how might have it gone differently from that moment versus them not? And it doesn't matter, because we're all put in families for like that for a reason, right? I needed to not have that support right away, you get it. But yeah, and so that's kind of the beginning of what I remember. I remember always having kind of, or if my mom was rocking me in the rocking chair, I remember, I think, just feeling so relaxed, but I would start to feel this like this expanding, this expansive feeling. And yeah, so then fast forward, I just feel this just intense love. And the only thing that I have to reference is, God. They talk about it in church. I just love the way I feel. I feel this Holy Spirit. And so I remember always trying to get my family to go to church. And, we didn't have this like religious upbringing. So, and this was when we had moved. And so my parents would humor me and we would go sometimes. And I'm sure, they enjoyed it at some points, but it still never became a regular thing. Fast forward, I write in my diary. I talk to God. I just have these feelings of like there is something more. But then when I get to college, I start to go to this um, Christian church gathering every once in a while, and they talked about traveling and converting people and to other, traveling to other countries. And now I look at it and I don't have any ill will about that, but for some reason that really triggered me. And it really, and just a lot of things they talked about, it just really started to push me away from Christianity and just religion altogether. But I kept reading books. I wish I could find this one book that he talked about having those out of body experiences as a child. And that really was like, oh my gosh, I am not alone in this. Okay. Like I started to feel like there's other people like this. And keep fast forwarding, I kept getting books. And oh my gosh, my cat is scratching at the door. And once in, we're just going to keep recording. Okay. Hey, cat. And I was always drawn to self-help, spiritual books. And that's just what I kept kind of diving into. As I got older, I dealt with a lot of depression, deep, deep depression. I didn't know what was going on. Now I know it was, dark night of the soul, different things I had to go through, but nobody's talking about that. So I got suicidal at one point. I, was on antidepressants and everything, and I'm not against those at all. Obviously, if you feel like you need them, that's your own decision. But there was a point where I felt like I didn't need them anymore, and that it was more about me learning what's going on, not just covering up the symptoms. And so I weaned myself off, whatever, and um, you know, still ups and downs with my emotions as we all go through. But it slowly became this realization of what emotions are, what their purpose is, and all of that. So, and I'm not going to go on and on about my story, but I just want to get to a part where it was huge for me after I had my first son. I'm sitting in the apartment and I'm just like on my phone, I think, still feeling this, kind of going down this path, learning about different things, chakras, energy, high vibration, stuff like that. And I come across Matt Kahn. If you haven't listened to him, he's super amazing. He actually just started a podcast. He's been on YouTube for quite a while. This was like my kid's 11 now, so 11 years ago. And it was just this, someone had shared in a group like this. He had he's like a channel, and he, um, is a spiritual teacher and whatever, answered this question. It was really awesome and it really struck me. So I really started following him. And that was like really what started opening me up. The stuff he talked about was so different, and it like almost gave me a headache because I was like, I feel what he's saying, but I can't comprehend it. But I was so drawn to it. And then I found this store that was, crystals, and they did Reiki. And I was like, what is this place? So I started going to this guy who was a interdimensional channel, we'll say. I don't know exactly what his title was. That really opened me up. I mean, oh my gosh, like I had no idea this world even existed. You hear about psychics and stuff, but that's about the extent. That really opened me up. That's probably a whole nother story of just the experiences I had. And it was almost like from that moment on, it opened me up, and I would not always realizing, but now I look back and realize that I am a channel. We all have the ability to channel. But some are more attuned in the beginning of their lives as children or as they go on, and then you can fine tune your skills and you start to realize these feelings and messages you get and what's going on, right? So I was also getting messages from the afterlife, from our loved ones, and whoa, this is interesting. Fast forward, having kids and always being kind of in a state of stress, I was not regularly open, right? I would have these experiences, and then years would go by and whatever, mom life. And then I had a really amazing experience where I went and got a massage from this woman, and afterwards I was kind of laying on the bed, and I think because I was in a really relaxed state, all of a sudden I'm getting a download of information about this girl's dad. That's weird. So I don't say anything, of course, because it's like, how weird would that be? If you've ever experienced that or whatever, it's like, what would I say? Um, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. My cat is just really trying to sabotage this. Now she wants out. And so I couldn't stop thinking about it. So I go home and I I see we have a mutual friend. And I reach out to her and I'm like, because I knew she wouldn't judge me because we've talked about spiritual stuff like this before. And I'm like, I know this sounds strange, but does this girl, like, does she have a dad that passed away? Was he like her softball coach? Like all this stuff. And she was like, yeah. And I was like, oh my gosh, do you think she'd be open to me talking to her about this? Like, I have to talk to her. It's like this feeling that was like, I have to share this message. Her dad is trying to talk to her from the other side. So I reached out to her on Messenger. I mean, I was like super nervous, but I'm like, I'm sorry. I just have to tell you, it's fine if you feel uncomfortable. And she was open to it. And everything I shared was spot on. And it was just amazing. I'm like, I can't believe this just happened. So then I also start taking a Learn to Channel course through Matt Kahn. And I really started to fine tune my skills and realize that all my writing that I did, I was channeling. I felt completely different. And the words that would come out, because like I would literally have a hard time having a conversation and forgetting. And like, I was like, can't think of words. Words are hard sometimes, right? Especially if like you're a mom or you're busy and your brain's just always busy. I'm like, how am I all of a sudden writing this stuff? Like it's moving me. I can feel the energy of it. And I was channeling. What? This is amazing. So we start practicing channeling. And the messages that came through for people was life changing for them. And that's essentially what a lot of this podcast is. I don't always know what I'm going to say. A lot of it is obviously I'm just sharing my story. Some of it is embodied wisdom. When you channel all the messages that come through, it stays in you and it kind of comes up later as, advice or wisdom, that you want to share. And then I feel a change when I know it's literally a message coming through from higher frequencies needing to be shared with that person. Sometimes it's just confirmation of stuff they're already doing and implementing in their life. And some of it's new and different. And every once in a while, I do get someone from the afterlife. I'm just trusting the process with that though, because I don't, to me, it's not like, oh man, I now can turn that into a business. Like, that's not what that means. That's not what that is for me. And now people do get paid for that because they should. Again, like I've said in the other episode, money is just an energy exchange. And those people should get paid for that. That's amazing. That's all they do. And I've have a friend who does this, and I've had amazing experiences with her that really helped me and my son with grieving one of our family members. But I'm just back to what I was saying. I'm just trusting that, that skill will come through. It just happens when it happens. I can't make it happen right now anyway. So, yeah, and here I am now having these messages needing to be through me. And that's why I started this podcast, because I'm like, I don't really know exactly what I'm going to say. I know it in the realm of what I want it to be. And I just have this urge. Like today, it was like, I was telling my husband, okay, I have to record. I don't know what I'm going to say, but I just need to record. Um, so yeah, that's like my story of kind of my spiritual path. And I love hearing all the different stories of people and their journey, because it's so easy to think that it always goes in that way, but it doesn't. And I always love being surprised. And I don't know why I'm surprised, but I hear people's just stories with, religion, and maybe it pushed them away, or maybe they still consider themselves a Christian, but they also or a channel or whatever. And I'm like, oh, I guess I never thought of that. I love keeping my mind open to those things and being humbled. Um, so, yeah, I just wanted to share that so you kind of see where I'm at, I guess, or how my journey went and is going, I suppose. But kind of the purpose of this podcast too is really, you're on this spiritual journey, and we want to start a business, right? We feel inspired to change the world, but we also need money to live. And so we start, but like for me, I've always been an entrepreneur. So I'm like following these third dimensional teachings of, now, nothing, not that it's wrong or that it's going to hold you back or that you shouldn't or should do it, whatever, but just sharing from my story is that, I did all the personal development. I was told if I just do personal development every day, which is important because it does teach you mindfulness. It does help you. Having positive thoughts is important, but the law of attraction had its time, right? But just like in school, we grow and we change. I don't still live my life from, okay, when you're in kindergarten, you don't have the same textbooks when you're in high school that you did when you're in kindergarten, right? We're always growing and evolving. And that's what the spiritual journey is. We're healing, and the things that we learn, there's always something new, right? We're always expanding. So it's not that the law of attraction is wrong, it's just not that simplified. There's more to it. So when you sit here, and here I am thinking, oh my God, okay, I got to keep my thoughts right, got to keep my thoughts right, got to keep my thoughts right. Like it was so stressful. It like honestly made me more stressed out than I was before. But again, like I said, there was a time and a place for all that stuff. It woke me up. I thought of things I never thought of before. I thought, wow, dreams could actually be possible. Like it gave me hope in my life again because I was so depressed. So, again, there is a time and place for this. But sometimes when we start to evolve, we start to ascend, right? The ascension process, but we're still following third dimensional teachings. There can be that in between space where it feels confusing. I don't know if anyone's gone through this. For me, it was like, okay, why is none of this though working for me? Am I not thinking positively enough? Like, is my vision board not clear? Am I not thinking about what I want every single day? Is it not clear? Well, first of all, you are the universe. How could the universe not know what you want if you are the universe? So, right there, you're like, okay, I don't have to think about it every day. If it's destined to be, it will happen, right? Like, if it's meant to be, it will happen. And then we have this fear of missing out. I'm going to miss out on opportunities. I'm going to miss out on this if I'm not constantly thinking about it or writing it down. It's not true. All that does is just create more stress. And then you're not even living in the present moment. You're just chasing this future idea that you have. And that's what me and my husband, when our first business was falling apart, that was us waking up out of a fantasy into reality, which can be very disorienting and very painful. But it's so needed to then up level yourself. And then how do we build from fifth dimensional consciousness? There's a lot of people out there talking about it. How do I grow a business now? How do I function in this reality now? Because before, I thought I had to do all these things to grow my business and to become successful, and now it feels different. Maybe success feels different to you now. It's not that you can't have all this money in the world and this amazing business that you built. You will have those things, but you can't manifest from the ego. You need to manifest from your soul. And you'll say, well, why did all these other people do all these things in the vision boards and they got what they wanted? Well, their path is just different than you. We don't always have all the answers, but that was just their path. But you might also realize a lot of those people are probably still living in like a third dimensional reality for them, right? Their consciousness is there. But for us, the path is different. Us light workers, the path is different. It's okay if it looks different than everybody else. They are playing a different game than we are. We incarnated on this planet to anchor more light, and we are doing different things. So you can do the vision board if it helps you get clear. Of course, we have goals and we have desires, but we have them and you almost release them and you think, man, that would be cool if that happened. And then you go about your day, and every moment you are taking inspired action, which will take you down the path, and maybe it'll align with what you wanted, and maybe what you want will change. I will say it always ends up better than how I imagined. So why would I want my what I want to do, my goals and like what I want to achieve, why would I want it so constricted? Right? They tell you have every detail mapped out. Like, I understand that, but what if it could be better than that? Why would I want it so confined in this box of what my mind thinks could be, what my ego thinks, right? So in the fifth dimensional consciousness, we have to just follow our soul. And it can be hard in the beginning because we have to release these limiting beliefs that we gained from those other teachings, right? And like hustle, hustle, hustle. We don't need that anymore because I'm working, I'm doing it. I don't need to hustle. I'm following my inspiration and I don't need to push myself. Before, it was always so stressed out. Am I doing enough? I got to work myself to death to be to a point of exhaustion. I'd wear this badge of like, look at me. I have no sleep, but hey, I'm reaching my goals. It doesn't really work like that anymore. Not for us. We don't have to. And it can it can be really weird at first, but this is where you cultivate faith. Just follow your soul's nudges. Like for me, just and as an example, and it wasn't so linear either. I just had one, it was like, I need a hobby. I need to start creating. As a stay-at-home mom, it was always about everybody else. So my great grandmother taught me how to sew or do embroidery, like stitch those little patterns. And she came to me and she was like, you need to do this again. And it started to open me up. Of course, I'm like, how can I turn this into a business? Don't you just love that? I don't know if you have that feeling. And I'm like, it doesn't need to be a business. This can just be a hobby. So I do it in the wintertime. I don't do it all the time. That opened me up. I started to open up this creativity. I love to do chalk. I started doing cartoon characters. It doesn't have to make sense. And that's the problem, is our logical mind comes in and we're like, how does this make sense on our path? We feel like we have to have the whole thing mapped out, right? We have to have 1-year goals, 3-year goals, 10-year goals. We have to have it all mapped out. Again, you can have those thoughts. I do. I know I want to get land. I want to do all these things, right? But Sorry, sometimes we'll have a pause because things are coming in. You think you have to have all that, but you don't, right? It will happen. You'll follow the nudges. You just trust. You take that leap of faith. You have to take a step for the universe to course correct you. If you're not taking steps, how does it's not nothing, you're not going to know. You can't stand and not take steps and follow what our soul wants to do because we're afraid or if it doesn't make sense, right? Just do it. I did. I just started following these little things, remember? And then I got the snail. I made the vivarium. I had no idea. I was just following what felt good, what brought me joy, right? I'm not making and selling embroidery. That's just how I started opening up my creativity. I literally had to Google hobbies. So if that's where you're at in your journey, you might have to. That's okay. Just to get the creativity flowing if you're not having a regular creative outlet. And then from there, you'll start to feel these nudges, oh my gosh, I just got this inspiration to do this. This feels good. And I will say, and I'm still kind of bad at it, but maybe if you're like how I was, I would announce everything like, oh my gosh, I'm doing this amazing thing. I would post it on Facebook or whatever, make this big announcement, but it puts pressure on you. It's okay to share, oh my gosh, I'm doing this fun thing right now. But maybe wait, work in silence for a little bit. Maybe don't tell everybody what you got going on. Again, I'm not always good at it. Maybe there's a reason. Sometimes we share things. We just feel like, I don't know why, I just feel like I got to share it. And if you feel embarrassed after, that's part of the process. We'll go over that. But just follow your joy and keep staying tuned because we will keep diving into this more. But if you listen to this, just what I want you to take away from this is take that stress off your shoulders that you need to be super clear on your goals and you need to think about it constantly. And just know that the universe knows what you want because you are the universe. Okay? Just follow that little inspiration. Just do what brings you joy and start there. That's the beginning of the path. Start getting creative and do what brings you joy. And the rest of the path will be revealed. Thank you so much for listening, and it is my honor to be of service. I love you.